Hi guys! In the previous video of polynomials, we learned how to expand and simplify two polynomials with two terms. In this video, we will be learning how to factor polynomials. Factoring is just opposite to expanding and simplifying. In expanding and simplifying, we use FOIL method or we use the formula method to change the polynomial into bracket form to a straight polynomial without a bracket. Whereas in factoring, we will be going back to the two bracket form. Let's learn how to do this. Before knowing polynomial factoring, you should know that polynomial factoring has different ways of doing it. So the first way that we will be discussing in this video is going to be factoring polynomials using common factors. Now, what do you mean by common factors? Let's say we're given an example, 5x squared plus 10x. This is a very easy example. All we have to do is just check in these two terms of the polynomial, do we have any common number that can divide both 5 and 10? And we notice that 5 is the common factor. So that means 5 comes in the table of 5 and 10 also comes in the table of 5. So we leave this number outside. And then we check, do we have any common variable in both of these terms? And we see this first term has a variable x squared, second term has a variable x. So both of these terms have x as a common variable factored out and everything else is written inside the bracket. So what are we left from the first term is just x. What are we left with the second term is 2. How do we get this? We just need to make sure that when we multiply this 5x back with x, we should be able to get our 5x squared. When we multiply 5x with 2, we should be able to get back this 10x. Let's go into another way of solving this particular example. If we have 5x squared plus 10x, we can write this down as 5x times x. So this small dot means multiplication, plus this means 10 times x. Now this is one term, this is the second term of polynomial. We'll first look at the numbers. So what's the common factor of 5 and 10? That is 5. Then we have a common x, means I have 1x here and I have 1x here. So whatever I have in all the terms in a polynomial, that is what I leave outside. So both of these have something common that I have left outside. Then I make a bracket. I am left with, from the first term is x. I am left with no x from the second term, but I am left with a 2 from here because 5 times 2 is 10. So you see, I get the answer like this. Let's do another example so that you understand it better. We'll do again a simple example. If I have 12x cubed plus 6x plus 9x squared, I now have 3 terms in this polynomial and I have to find out if there is any common factor in this polynomial or not. And I can notice that when I look at the numbers 12, 6 and 9, all of these come in the table of 3. So 3 is the common factor for 12, 6 and 9. From here I have x cubed. Here I have x and here I have x squared. X has no power means x has power 1. There is a shortcut to know about taking out common factors of the variable is that whatever variable you have in common, like for example I have x here, I have x here, I have x here, the lowest power of the x is your common factor. Now you make a bracket. 3 multiplied by what will give you 12, and that's a 4. And out of the 3 x's, I have taken out one x. I'm left with 2 x's. So I'm going to put an x squared there. I put in the same sign I have here. Then 3 multiplied by what will give me 6, and that's a 2. I have 1x here, I have 1x here. I have no x left there. So I don't put any x here. Then 3 multiplied by what gives me 9 is 3. I have 1x here, I have x squared here, so I have 1x left that I can put in here, and that's it. I'm done. I have factored out my common factors. If you're still confused, let's go over another example. Let's say I have 4x squared plus 8x cubed. I have two terms in my polynomials. I have two numbers, 4 and 8. They both come in the table of 4, so 4 is my common number factor. Then I told you in the previous example that if we have same variables, the lower power is your common factor. We take that out. Now what are we left inside the bracket is 4 multiplied by what will give you 4, and that's a 1. I have x squared out, so I'm not left with any of the x's here, so I don't have to put anything for x. The next I have is 4 multiplied by what gives me 8, and that is 2. I have taken out two x's and there are three x's in here, so I am left with 1x. And that's my answer. Let's go over another simple example. If I have 10x squared y squared plus 25xy cubed. Now in this particular case, I have number. I'll look at the number of terms I have, and I still have two terms. Remember, the terms in the polynomial are separated by plus and minus signs. So again, I have two terms. I'll look at the numbers. Both of these numbers come in the table of 5. So 5 is my common factor. Then for looking at the variables, I will look at the common variables first. This x has a power 2. This x has no power, so power is 1. And I told you similar variable, smaller power is your common factor. So we'll take out x to the power 1 out. Then we have another variable in this case. We have y squared and we have y cubed. Smaller number is the common power variable. We'll take that out. Now what are we left in the bracket? So first we'll look at the number. 5 multiplied by what gives me 10? That's a 2. Then I'll look at my x's. I have two x's here and I have one x out. So 1x I'm still left with that I'm going to put inside the bracket. I have two y's here, I have two y's here. I'm not left with any y to put in, so I don't put any y with this term. The next, what multiplied by 5 will give me 25, and that's a 5. I have 1x here, I have 1x here. I'm not left with any x's. I have two y's here, I have three y's here. I'm left with a 1y that I'm going to put in here. And this is my final answer. Let's do an example where we have a minus sign. Let's say I have 25x cubed y squared and z minus 50x squared y and z squared. Again, I have two terms because terms are separated by plus and minus sign. Now, to find out my factor, I always have to look for my greatest common factor. 25 and 50, they both come in the table of 5, and they also come in the table of 25. And 25 is the highest number where we would see both of these numbers in the table. So we'll take out 25 as the common factor because this number has to be the greatest common factor. Now we look at the similar variable powers. So x has power 3 here, x has power 2 here. Lower power is your common factor. We'll write that down here. Then we look at the next one. Y has power 2, y has power 1. Lower power is your factor. Z has no power means power 1. Z has power 2. Lower power is your factor out. Now we'll see what are we left in the bracket inside here. So we'll first see 25 multiplied by what will give us 25, and that's a 1. Then we look at x squared, and this is x cubed. I have taken out two of the x's, but in this first term I have three x's. I'm still left with one more x that I'm going to put here. I have taken out one y. I have two y's in the first term, so I'm still left with a y that I have to put here. I have taken out one z and I have one z only here, so I'm not left with any z's that I don't have to put anywhere. Then I put this minus sign in here and I do 25 multiplied by what will give me 50. and that's a 2. Then I see x, I have 2 x's here, I have 2 x's here. I'm not left with any x to be put in here. I have 1 y, I have 1 y. I'm not left with any y's as well. I have 1 z, I have 2 z's here. So I'm left with 1 z to be put in there. And this is my final answer for common factoring. There are more examples for common factoring where we have to do grouping first. Now, what is this method of grouping? Let's take up this example. If I have ax plus ay plus 2x plus 2y. Now, grouping is applicable when we are given 4 terms in a polynomial. All we have to do is just group the first 2 terms in a bracket and last 2 terms in a bracket. And now we will find out the common factor from the first bracket separately and the second bracket separately. So what's the common factor in this is both of these terms have a as common. So I'm going to take a out. What am I left with inside is x. What am I left here is y. Then in here, I have 2 as a common factor. What am I left in the bracket is x. What am I left here is y. Now, as I told you, a polynomial function is the one that is always separated by a plus or a minus sign. So this is all one term and this is all second term. In the first term and in the second term, I have x plus y to be seen as common. So I'm going to take that out as common. And then what am I left with inside? From the first term, I'm left with a. I put this plus sign here. From the second term, I'm left with 2. And this is my final answer. So what did I do is I changed my initial question that was given in this form, ax plus ay plus 2x plus 2y. This was a no bracket form question to a bracket form question. And bracket form is called a factored form. Let's take up another example in case you're confused about this. If we have 9x squared plus 15x plus 3x plus 5. Again, we have 4 terms. We have to group the first 2 terms in one bracket, last 2 terms in another bracket. And now we take out a common factor from the first bracket and then we take out the common factor from the second bracket. What's the common number? 9 and 15. They both come in the table of 3 and that's the greatest common factor for both. So I take out 3 common. Then from x squared and x to the power 1, I'm going to take out x to the power 1 out. We are left with 3x plus what multiplied by 3 will give me a 15. That's a 5. Because I have 1x out and there is also 1x here, I'm not left with any 1. I'm not left with any x here. Then I put a plus sign there. Here, I see I don't have any number or any variable common. So if nothing is common, you always take out 1 common. And then you rewrite everything inside the bracket with 1. Now we see here, this is our first bracket. This is our second bracket. What's common in the first bracket is 3x plus 5. What's common in the second bracket with the first bracket is again 3x plus 5. We are left with 3x and we are left with plus 1. And this is how we get our. Let's go over the one last question and we'll write down the steps to summarize this method. And the question is m squared plus 4m minus 4n minus mn. Here we would write down the steps to conclude it. The first step is when we see 4 terms to be factored, we group them. And how do we group them? We group the first 2 terms in one bracket and the last 2 terms in another bracket. So that's the second step. Group first 2 terms in one bracket and last 2 terms in another bracket. Third step is take out common factor from each bracket. So we take out common factor from the first and the second bracket, and how would it look like? So in the first bracket I have m squared here, I have 4m here. I do not have any number in common, so I'm just going to put in 1 there. When you don't have any number in common, just put a 1. But because I have m squared here and 1m here, so I have 1m common, I'm going to be left with 1m here. I'm going to be left with 4 and no m in this case because that 1m has been taken out already. Then I put a minus sign here. Again, I have no number in common. So whenever I have no number in common, I take out 1 as a number. And then I look at my variables. So I have n here and I have n here. So basically I have n1 and n1 here, and I'm going to take out n1 out. I do not have anything else in common. Then I make my bracket. Now, what multiplied by 1 will give me a 4 is a 4. N has already been taken out, so I'm not left with any m there. Now, this is something that you have to note here, is we do not put negative sign just like that. Because we have a minus 1n here, we would see that minus 1 minus sign has already been taken out. So minus 1 multiplied by what will give you a minus 1 here, and that is a plus 1. N has already been taken out. We are just left with an m. If we want to see whether we have done whatever is done correctly or not, all we have to do is just try multiplying it and see if we get these terms back. 1n times 4 is 4n, and that's right. 1n times 1m with a minus sign gives us a minus mn, and that's fine, so it's correct. Now once we have taken out the common factors from each bracket, we have these two terms. We'll move on to our fourth step, and that is write the common bracket out. And fifth step is write final answer. So let's write the common bracket out first. And what is our common bracket in both of these terms is 4 plus m, and this is m plus 4. It's m plus 4, it's 4 plus m. It's the same thing. So I'm going to take out m plus 4, and I'm left with 1m minus 1n inside the bracket, and this gives me the final answer.